Zoe took a deep breath, her fingers nervously brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. She looked directly into the camera, her expression calm, but there was an undeniable intensity in her eyes. You know, when you think of family, you expect loyalty. You expect love. You think these people are the ones who'll have your back, no matter what. But sometimes, the person closest to you is the one who will betray you the hardest. She paused for a moment, her lips tightening into a thin line as she recalled the event. I never imagined something like this could happen to me. Not at a family party of all places. But that's exactly what my sister did. She tried to frame me. And the worst part? She did it in front of everyone. Zoe's eyes flickered briefly as she leaned forward, her voice taking on a quieter, more focused tone. It all started like any other family gathering. A big dinner, all of us crowded into my parents' house, everyone talking, laughing, eating. But underneath the surface, something was brewing. Something I couldn't have imagined in a million years. She took another breath, steadying herself. My sister and I had never really been close. I mean, we were sisters, so there was always this forced bond, but we had our differences. She was always the golden child, always the one who did everything right in our parents' eyes. And me? Well, I was the one who didn't really fit in. I wasn't the perfect daughter, the one who followed all the rules. I was always the black sheep, the one who was a little too rebellious, a little too independent. Zoe shifted uncomfortably in her seat, the emotions rising up again. But that night, at the party, I never expected her to take it so far. I was in the kitchen, helping my mom clear the table when my sister came in, acting like everything was normal. She asked me if I'd seen her purse. Of course I said no, because I hadn't. She was always losing her things, and I was used to her asking me for help finding stuff. But this time was different. Zoe's voice hardened. She looked me right in the eyes, and out of nowhere, she accused me. She said I had taken her purse. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about losing a purse. This was about her trying to set me up, trying to make me look bad in front of everyone. She was framing me. Her fists clenched, the anger that had been building within her starting to show. I couldn't believe it. I tried to stay calm. I told her I didn't have her purse, that I didn't even know where it was. But she wouldn't let up. She started raising her voice, calling me a liar. She accused me of everything, stealing from her, being dishonest, ruining the family's reputation, all in front of everyone. Zoe's eyes burned with the memory, her voice steady but laced with hurt. And then she went even further. She walked into the living room, telling everyone that I had taken her purse and that I was hiding it. My parents, my relatives, everyone started looking at me like I was guilty, like I had done something wrong. I was completely blindsided. My sister knew exactly what she was doing. She was manipulating everyone, making it seem like I was the villain. Zoe's voice grew quieter, but there was a resolve behind her words. But what she didn't count on was me fighting back. I knew I had to do something. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. Her hands gripped the edge of the table as she leaned in closer. I wasn't going to let her lie to everyone. I wasn't going to be the one blamed for something I didn't do. So I decided to expose her, right then and there, in front of the entire family. She let the silence linger, the weight of her words settling in. And trust me, what happened next? You won't believe it. It was a twist no one saw coming. Zoe's fingers gripped the edge of the table tighter as she spoke, her voice calm but filled with the intensity of someone who had lived through a moment that would change everything. So there I was, standing in the living room, with my sister telling everyone I had stolen her purse. The whole family was looking at me like I was guilty. It felt like the walls were closing in. My heart was pounding in my chest. But in that moment, something clicked. I wasn't going to let her do this to me. Not again. Not this time. Zoe paused, letting the memory flood her with a mix of anger and determination. I knew I had to expose her, but I also knew I couldn't do it in a way that would make me look like the bad guy. I wasn't about to play into her game. So I took a deep breath, and I did what I should have done from the beginning. I asked her one question. "Why are you accusing me?" I said it calmly, but I could see the panic in her eyes. That was the first crack in her plan. She shook her head slightly, as if reliving the exact moment. She started stammering, saying she wasn't accusing me, that she just thought I might have taken it. But the look on her face told a different story. I knew I had to keep going. I wasn't going to back down. Not when everyone was watching, waiting to see who would crack first. Zoe took a breath, her voice growing firmer as she continued. I asked her again, louder this time. "Why are you accusing me? What makes you think I took your purse?" The room went quiet. The tension was thick. My family members were watching closely, waiting for something. But what they didn't know was that I was playing her at her own game. I had to turn the tables on her. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She looked down for a moment, as if composing herself before continuing. And then, in the silence, I did something that would change everything. I took out my phone and I opened my Photos app. Everyone was still staring at me, but I had already prepared for this moment. I scrolled through my pictures, casually, as if nothing was wrong, and then I showed everyone the last picture I took before the party started. Zoe's eyes glinted with quiet pride as she remembered the moment she had turned everything around. It was a picture of me holding my purse, right before I entered the party. I had taken it because I wanted to show off my new bag, so I showed it to everyone. "This is what I was doing before I came in here," I said, holding the picture up for everyone to see. "I don't know what you're talking about, but here's proof that I've had my purse the whole time." She let out a small laugh, shaking her head as the memory played out in her mind. The room fell completely silent. My sister's face went white as a sheet. She didn't know what to say. I could see her trying to come up with an excuse, but she had nothing. She was exposed, caught in the act of lying. Zoe leaned forward, her voice lower now, more intense. But I wasn't done yet. I knew I had to drive the point home. I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this. So I asked her, "Where is your purse then?" I knew she had hidden it somewhere. She wasn't expecting me to call her out like this. She was expecting me to crumble, to back down, to apologize for something I hadn't even done. She shook her head, the satisfaction of the moment creeping back into her words. She looked around, trying to keep her composure, but it was clear she was losing. She started to fumble with her words, trying to say she'd misplaced it. But at that point, everyone was already starting to figure it out. They saw the lies for what they were. They saw her for who she really was. Zoe's gaze softened, her tone now a mixture of exhaustion and pride. I turned to my parents and said, "I didn't take her purse. She's been lying to you all, trying to make me look like the bad guy." The silence in the room was deafening. My parents looked at each other, unsure of what to believe at first. But the evidence was there, right in front of them. Zoe shook her head slowly, her lips tight. It was at that moment that my sister's entire facade crumbled. She had nothing left to hide behind. My mom finally asked her, "Where did you hide it, Emily?" And after a long silence, she finally admitted it. She had hidden the purse in the guest room. She had planned this whole thing to frame me for something I didn't do. Zoe's voice hardened with a finality that came with years of frustration. She had tried to manipulate the whole family, to turn everyone against me. But in the end, it was her lies that got exposed. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not now. Not ever. She leaned back, her expression unwavering. That night, I didn't just clear my name. I took back my power. I made sure everyone saw who she really was. And in that moment, I realized sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free, it destroys the ones who tried to tear you down. Zoe paused, her gaze fixed, her resolve clear. And trust me, you'll want to know what happened next. It didn't end there. The consequences of her betrayal were just beginning. Zoe's fingers tapped on the table, the rhythm slow and deliberate, as if reflecting on the calmness she felt now that everything had unfolded. She looked into the camera, her expression resolute. Once my sister's lies were exposed, I thought it was over. I thought the truth would finally put everything to rest. But that's the thing about betrayal. Once it's out in the open, the damage doesn't just vanish. It lingers, and it doesn't go away until everything is truly settled. She shifted in her seat, her tone turning more reflective. That night, after I called her out, things didn't go back to normal. My sister was mortified. I could see the anger in her eyes, the humiliation. She didn't just feel embarrassed in front of our family. She felt exposed, and that's the last thing someone like her ever wants, being exposed for who they really are. Zoe's smile was small, but full of quiet satisfaction. But what she didn't realize was that the moment she decided to lie to everyone, the moment she tried to frame me, she had already lost. She thought I would stay quiet, that I'd be too afraid to stand up for myself. But standing up for myself was exactly what I had to do. The moment I did, I took control. And the family? They started to see the truth. Her voice became more serious, the emotions from the evening beginning to resurface. Of course, it wasn't easy for them to accept. You can't just have someone you trust, someone you think is family, betray you like that and not expect some fallout. My mom and dad were hurt too. They felt like they should have seen it earlier, that they should have noticed the signs. But when it came down to it, I wasn't the one who'd broken the trust in this family. My sister was. She leaned forward, her voice lowering with intensity. The hardest part of all of this wasn't just the betrayal, it was what it did to the rest of our family dynamic. My parents, my relatives, they all had to come to terms with the fact that they had been manipulated. They had believed my sister's lies without ever questioning them. And that's the thing about manipulation. It's not just about the person doing the lying. It's about how they pull everyone else in. It's about the damage it causes in relationships. And that's what my sister had done. Zoe exhaled slowly, the weight of it all pressing in on her. But here's the thing. Once you expose someone's lies, once you show the truth for what it is, there's no going back. My sister tried to control the narrative for so long, and when I finally stood up and exposed her, I knew there was no going back for either of us. She had already burned the bridge between us. Her voice grew colder, the realization setting in. But even with all that, I wasn't going to let her get away with the way she had treated me, the way she had tried to destroy me in front of everyone. I wasn't going to walk away and just let it slide. I had worked too hard to rebuild my reputation, to build myself back up after all the pain she'd caused me. I wasn't about to let her think she could take that all away with a few lies. Zoe looked directly into the camera again, her tone hardening. The confrontation with my parents was difficult. They asked me if I was okay. They asked if I could forgive her. But here's the thing. I wasn't sure I could. Forgiveness wasn't about her. It wasn't about making her feel better about what she'd done. It was about me. It was about deciding whether or not I was willing to let go of the anger, the hurt, and the resentment she'd caused me. And that's when I realized, no matter how much she hurt me, I had the power to choose whether I wanted to keep carrying that weight, whether I wanted to keep letting her actions control me. Zoe paused, her expression softening as she reflected on the lessons she had learned. Forgiveness wasn't something I owed her. It was something I owed myself. The truth was, I didn't need her to apologize or even acknowledge what she had done. I didn't need her to regret how she treated me. I needed to let go of the hurt so I could move on with my life. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't holding on to the past anymore. I was ready to let go. Her shoulders relaxed, and she leaned back in her chair, the calmness now returning. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. I still had to work through the feelings of betrayal, the anger, the frustration. But with each day that passed, I began to see how much stronger I was because of what I had gone through. The truth had set me free, not just from my sister's lies, but from the emotional chains I had been carrying for far too long. Zoe looked back at the camera, her voice clear and filled with a quiet strength. So, yeah, my sister tried to frame me. She thought she could ruin my life, tear me down in front of everyone. But what she didn't know was that in trying to destroy me, she had only made me stronger. And in the end, it was her lies that got exposed, not mine. It was her actions that caused the real damage, not mine. And that's the part she'll never understand. She smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile, her eyes full of resolve. In the end, I came out on top. Not because I proved her wrong, but because I took back control. I showed everyone, including myself, that no matter what happens, no matter who betrays you, you have the power to rise above it. You don't have to let their actions define you. You define who you are, and that's the lesson I learned. Zoe's smile widened, and trust me, you won't believe how everything else unfolds from here. But that's a story for another time. Zoe exhaled slowly, a calmness settling in her chest as she leaned back in her chair. She could still feel the sting of the betrayal, but it was starting to fade. The anger was gone now, replaced by something stronger. Something more empowering. As she looked back at the camera, there was no more hesitation in her voice, only a steady determination. You know, she began, her voice quieter now, but the weight of her words still hung heavy. When the truth comes out, it doesn't just expose the person who's lying. It exposes everything, the hidden motives, the jealousy, the insecurities. What my sister didn't realize was that by trying to frame me, by trying to tear me down in front of everyone, she revealed more about herself than she ever intended. She paused for a moment, her fingers grazing the edge of the table. And that's the part that hit me hardest. Not the fact that she lied, but the fact that she thought she could. She thought she could manipulate me, make me the villain in this story, and no one would notice. But the truth was right in front of them, and they saw it. They saw her for who she really was. And that was her downfall. Zoe's expression became more serious, her eyes narrowing as she continued. But what happened after the party? That's the real turning point. Because while I was dealing with the fallout of her lies, While I was trying to clear my name and get past the mess she made, something shifted in me. I realized that this wasn't just about her anymore. This wasn't about defending myself or proving her wrong. This was about standing up for myself, about showing everyone, including myself, that I could handle whatever life threw at me. Her tone softened as she thought about the aftermath. At first, I thought the confrontation with my family would be the end of it. I thought I'd expose her lies, clear my name, and that would be it. But no, there were still consequences. Consequences I didn't see coming. The cracks in our family were there, and they weren't going to heal just because the truth came out. Zoe shook her head slightly, almost ruefully. What I didn't expect was the tension that followed. My parents had a hard time accepting that my sister could lie to them like that. They didn't want to believe it. They wanted to believe the best in her, just like they always had. But deep down, I knew the truth. And it wasn't just about me and my sister anymore. It was about the fact that a lie like that had shattered the trust we all had in each other. She sighed, the weight of that realization pressing down on her once more. And that's the hardest part. The betrayal wasn't just between me and my sister. It was between me and my family. They had been complicit in her lies for so long, and I couldn't ignore that anymore. But what could I do? What could I say that would make them see the damage that had been done? Her gaze softened, and she leaned forward, her tone reflective. I decided to take a step back, not because I wanted to distance myself from them, but because I needed to heal. I needed to figure out who I was outside of all the lies, outside of all the expectations they had placed on me. And I couldn't do that if I was still trying to fix something that was already broken. Zoe's voice became more confident, the clarity in her words unmistakable. I realized that healing doesn't come from making things right with other people. It comes from making things right with yourself. And that was the moment I knew I had to move forward. I had to let go of the anger, the hurt, and the frustration. It wasn't about forgiving my sister or my parents. It was about freeing myself from the hold they had over me. Her eyes grew softer, the reflection of her personal growth shining through. I spent the next few months focusing on myself. I poured everything into my career, into building my life in a way that made me feel fulfilled and independent. I surrounded myself with people who supported me, who saw me for who I truly was, not the person my sister tried to make me out to be, not the scapegoat, not the villain. Zoe smiled to herself, the peace in her expression undeniable. And that's when everything changed. I started to feel confident in who I was again. I realized that I didn't need to prove anything to anyone, not even to my family. I had already shown them what I was capable of. I had already proven my worth, and no one could take that from me. I wasn't going to let my sister's lies define me. I wasn't going to let her manipulation have any more power over my life. Her voice dropped a little, the finality in her words clear. What happened next wasn't about vengeance, though. It wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back my life. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my sister, control my narrative anymore. And in doing that, I found the peace I had been searching for all along. Zoe's smile deepened, a sense of closure washing over her. It took me a while to get here, but I finally understood that the greatest revenge I could get was to live a life I was proud of, a life that no one could take away from me. And that was more than enough. She leaned back in her chair, a peaceful look on her face as she finished. And that's how I exposed the lies, took back my power, and walked away stronger than ever. Zoe leaned back, letting the silence linger for a moment as she collected her thoughts. The weight of everything she had been through still hung around her, but there was a calmness in her eyes, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. She spoke again, her voice softer now, but still carrying the strength of someone who had truly learned from the experience. "You know," she began, her tone reflective, "when you go through something like this, something that shakes you to your core, you start to question everything. You question your relationships, your choices, the people you thought you could trust. You start wondering how you missed the signs, how you let yourself get caught up in someone else's lies. It's like waking up from a dream you didn't realize was a nightmare." Zoe shook her head slightly, as if recalling how easy it had been to overlook the signs of betrayal. "I spent so much time thinking about how I could have prevented this. I thought, if only I'd been more careful, if only I'd seen it sooner. But the truth is, no matter how much I replayed it in my mind, nothing would change. The only thing I could control now was how I moved forward." She exhaled slowly, the reflection of the past still lingering in her voice. "And that's when I made a decision to stop looking back, to stop wondering what could have been different. I realized that I had spent so much of my life trying to please everyone, trying to be the person my family wanted me to be. But at some point, you have to stop living for everyone else. You have to stop being what they want you to be and start being who you really are. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my sister, dictate who I was anymore." Her gaze grew more intense, her hands resting on the table as if grounding herself in her words. "So I let go of the guilt. I let go of the anger. I let go of everything that was holding me back. And I focused on what mattered, the future, my future. I had learned a hard lesson, but I knew it was time to move on. I wasn't going to let one person's betrayal, no matter how close they were to me, define who I was or what I could achieve." Zoe's expression softened as she thought about the next step she had taken. "I started putting myself first. For the first time in my life, I started living for me. I focused on my career, my goals, my passions. I took that energy, the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, and I channeled it into something positive, something that was mine. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it." Her voice grew steadier, filled with quiet pride. "I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need my sister's validation. I didn't need my parents' praise. I had everything I needed inside me. And when I stopped waiting for others to give me what I deserved, that's when everything started to change. That's when the success started coming. That's when I felt like I could finally breathe again." Zoe paused, her eyes reflecting the depth of her transformation. "But I realized something else along the way, too. It wasn't just about moving forward, building a new life. It was about taking back my sense of self-worth, about knowing that I was enough. I didn't need to prove myself to anyone, not my sister, not my family, not even the world. I was already worthy of everything I had, and I was never going to let anyone make me feel less than that again." She smiled softly, the weight lifting off her shoulders. "The truth is, I had spent so many years giving away pieces of myself, trying to keep the peace, trying to meet other people's expectations. But the more I gave, the more I lost. And when I realized that, I stopped. I stopped trying to please everyone else. I started doing things for me, and it made all the difference." Zoe's voice softened, the lessons learned clearer than ever. And here's the most important part of all this. The one thing I really want to say. You don't have to carry someone else's baggage. You don't have to let their lies, their betrayal, or their hurtful actions control you. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to cut ties with people who bring nothing but negativity into your life. And you are allowed to take back your power. Her gaze was steady, her words filled with a quiet strength. I don't regret what happened. I don't regret exposing my sister for what she did, even if it was painful. Because in the end, it taught me something that no one could ever take away from me: my strength. I've learned that I'm capable of so much more than I ever gave myself credit for, and no one can ever take that from me. Zoe smiled, a genuine warmth in her expression now. It wasn't just about getting revenge on my sister. It was about proving to myself that I could rise above anything life threw at me. That I could take back what was mine, not just my name, not just my reputation, but my life. And that's the victory I'm proud of. She leaned back in her chair, her tone relaxed but filled with a sense of peace. So, to anyone watching this, remember this. You are not defined by what others do to you. You are defined by how you respond, and if you choose to rise above, to move forward, and to take back your power, nothing, and I mean nothing, can stop you. Zoe's smile deepened as she spoke the final words. The past is behind me, and the future, it's all mine. Zoe took a long, steady breath as she looked into the camera, her face now softened, but there was a quiet strength in her eyes. The anger and frustration she once felt had been replaced with a calm clarity, and she knew this chapter of her life was finally coming to a close. But it wasn't just about the end. It was about what she had learned along the way and the lessons she could share. I'm not gonna lie, she began, her voice lower now, filled with introspection. After everything that happened, after all the lies and betrayal, there were days I felt lost. I felt like the world had turned against me, and that I had to fight to get back my place in it. But as time passed, I started to realize something I wish I'd known sooner. She leaned forward, her expression growing more sincere. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't define you. It doesn't tell you who you are, what you're worth, or what you're capable of. No matter how much someone tries to hurt you, no matter how deep the wound, you still have the power to write your own story. You still have the power to rise above. Zoe's eyes narrowed with certainty, the weight of her words settling in. I spent so much time after the incident trying to make sense of why my sister did what she did. I asked myself a million times if I could have done something differently. But here's the truth. Sometimes people hurt you, not because of something you did, but because of something broken in them. And you can't fix other people. You can only fix yourself. Her voice softened, but there was still a quiet fire in it. The key to healing, the key to moving forward, is not about waiting for apologies or looking for closure from the people who hurt you. It's about finding peace within yourself. It's about realizing that you are whole, no matter what anyone else has done. You have the strength inside you to walk away from the hurt and create a new path forward. And that's exactly what I did. Zoe's smile was gentle, but there was power in it. The moment I stopped blaming myself, the moment I stopped letting my sister's actions control how I saw myself, was the moment everything shifted. It wasn't about proving her wrong anymore. It wasn't about getting revenge or making her feel guilty. It was about reclaiming my own life, my own power, and my own peace. She sat back, her posture more relaxed now, but the conviction in her voice remained unwavering. What happened next wasn't some dramatic, life-changing event. It was simple. It was me moving forward. It was me choosing to stop looking back and deciding to create a future that made me proud. And that's where I found my real strength. Through forgiveness, through letting go, and through choosing to rise above everything I had been through. Zoe's expression softened as she looked directly at the camera. I'm not saying it was easy. I'm not saying it happened overnight. But what I am saying is this. You don't have to carry the weight of betrayal forever. You don't have to let someone else's actions define who you are or where you're going. You are in control. You are the one who decides your future. She smiled again, a sense of peace settling over her. And that's the lesson I want you to take from this. No matter what life throws at you, no matter how many times you're hurt or betrayed, you have the power to rise above it. You can choose to move forward, to take back your life, and to build a future you can be proud of. You don't need anyone's approval to be great. You don't need anyone's validation to succeed. You are enough. You always have been. Zoe looked into the camera one last time, her smile steady and confident. Thank you for watching my story. If you've learned something from this, if you've found strength in my words, then I encourage you to hit that subscribe button. Like and share this video with anyone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new chapter of my journey. You won't believe what's coming next. It's going to be powerful, and I promise you won't want to miss it. She paused for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then, with a soft but firm final note, she added, remember, your story is still being written. Keep moving forward. Your best days are still ahead of you.